Well, you guys have been asking for it, so here it is. "83 years after the Airbender genocide, Prince Zuko would be born to the Fire Nation. Upon the untimely death of his cousin, Lu Tin, Zuko became the heir to the throne. But Zuko would be overshadowed by his sister Azula, who was a more talented firebender than he. During his adolescence, Zuko unintentionally disrespected a Fire Nation general. Zuko's father disciplined the young man for his insolence. He challenged him to Agni Kai. Zuko would refuse. As a result, he was banished for his weakness, scorched by a scar that would forever mark him for his shame. To regain his honor, he relentlessly pursued the re-emerging avatar, the last Airbender. The Forsaken Prince would learn much on his journey. He would be tested in his strengths, his skills, and his standards. In time, he would unravel the evil of the Fire Nation and his father, turning coat and joining the Avatar. Together, Avatar Aang, his crew, and Zuko would help bring the elements back into balance, defeating the Fire Nation. Zuko would go on to become a Fire Lord, rebuilding his nation, his legacy marked by his compassion and vigor. "152 years after the Airbender genocide, Mako was born to a Fire Nation mother and an Earth Kingdom father. However, Mako and his brother, Bolin, were orphaned at a young age. Consequently, the pair would grow up quickly, having to defend themselves from the unforgiving streets of Republic City. Eventually, Mako and Bolin would fall into the criminal underworld, doing odd jobs for the triads throughout the city. They would learn a lot from their experience, increasing their street smarts tenfold. But Mako wanted a more legitimate life, one that would bring him and his brother out of poverty. In time, Mako and Bolin would join the Pro Bending League, participating in legitimate sport rather than petty crime. There, they would meet the new avatar, Korra. Through a series of events, they would go from a professional sports team to a dynamic fighting force, protecting Republic City on several occasions. Mako would help Korra defeat Amon and the Equalists, face off against Unalaq and the Dark Spirits, apprehend the anarchist Zahir, and defend against Kuvira and the Earth Empire. Though much of Mako's elder life is unknown, he would be remembered for his loyalty, his passion, and his determination. In most of my Versus videos, I compare each combatant in their prime. For this matchup, I'll be observing these two fighters around the same age. For Zuko, I will be observing him from the Surge graphic novel series between the ages of 18 and 19. For Mako, I will be observing him from Legend of Korra between the ages of 18 and 19. Wanting to meet his father's expectations as the heir to the throne, Zuko committed his body to a warrior's discipline. Before Zuko became a definitive master firebender, he was a natural talent in his physicality. He was fast with his hands, agile on his feet, and devastating with a pair of swords. As a professional athlete and a trained police officer, Mako would also uphold his body to the highest standard. Though he did not have the same training as Zuko, he would still be a prominent physical opponent, capable of deft throws, powerful strikes, and agile leaps and bounds. Specializing in dual blade martial arts, Zuko was a master swordsman. Trained by the master Piandao, he would use his skills during his covert operations as the Blue Spirit. His mastery of the blade was so considerable, even the Fire Lord, his father, did not dare challenge him without his ability to bend. Mako would never receive military-grade training. Instead, he would be a practiced pro-bender. When looking at the sport itself, we can infer that Mako was experienced with precision and distance. Without the experience of Agni Kai, like Zuko, he would be less experienced with close quarters combat. But there is an argument that Mako's use of firebending was more accurate than Zuko's, and his training as a pro-bender bodes well for his physical endurance. Zuko could handle himself very well without the use of his bending, but his use of non-bending martial arts did not stop in his swordsmanship. When stripped of bending or his swords, Zuko was more than competent in his use of hand-to-hand combat. He was able to contend with many soldiers within the Earth Kingdom and Fire Nation without the use of his bending. The only person to seem to have him outdone was his sister Azula, but she was something of an unnatural prodigy in all aspects of combat. After his short career as a pro-bender, Mako would move into the police force of Republic City. One would assume that he had additional training in his non-bending skills, learning hand-to-hand martial arts from a trainer. However, he seemed to have trouble with non-bending equalists. Yet, in another instance, he grappled and tossed an equalist with seemingly relative ease. This bodes well for his strength. It makes sense in the context of his more brutish, criminal background. When comparing the two, it would seem that Zuko far outclassed Mako's non-bending martial arts. In terms of their raw physiques, they were pretty much on par. Young adult males of similar builds and agility. The gap between them comes from their respective training. Zuko grew up in a military family, trained to be a firebending warrior at a young age. Mako grew up on the streets, trained to be a police officer. It's the difference between a Navy SEAL and a beat cop. While Mako could hold his own in a physical contest, he simply did not have the training to end his opponent with the same efficiency as Zuko. In short, Mako was skilled, but Zuko was lethal. Zuko gets the edge for his physical abilities. Firebending was the element of power and energy. Unlike water, earth, and airbending, firebending came directly from one's chi, instead of an existing element. It may have lacked in the defensive approaches of the other elements, but it more than made up for it in a dominant offense. Firebenders often utilized quick and fierce attacks with the mentality that the best defense was a perfect offense. Of course, when one dedicates themselves to such an offense, they often leave themselves open to attack. Zuko would become a master firebender during his time as the Fire Nation Prince, but he did not start out that way. Zuko was something of a late bloomer, overshadowed by his sister Azula, who was a natural prodigy. As a child, he was entirely unimpressive, incapable of the most basic use of fire. His initial lack of skill would actually strengthen his drive. From childhood to his teenage years, he would go from amateur to master by way of focused, intense training. In contrast to Zuko, who lived in the comfort of a palace his whole life, Mako grew up on the streets. Mako did not have master firebenders teaching him how to fight. Instead, he was taught by triads and the other gangs of Republic City. Over time, Mako became more and more proficient with his firebending. His skills would be honed during his short pro-bending career, and he would receive additional training from the Republic City police force. Although he was no prince or soldier, Mako could certainly hold his own with the best of them. Originally, Zuko would be given general training like any other Fire Nation soldier. For this, he was extremely stiff and firm, a slave to his form. Even with his elementary use of firebending, he was able to defeat General Zhao and Agni Kai. After his training with his uncle, General Iroh, he would gain more precision, and after his training with the last dragons, he would gain fluidity. Even as a rigid Fire Nation soldier, Zuko would be skilled, displaying a talent with fire daggers, fire whips, and sustained fire blooms. What's really impressive about his unbroken sequences of fire was his ability to utilize it without tiring. The reason for this may stem from his drive and rage against the Avatar, which originally compelled him. However, Zuko's drive would diminish when he was unsure of his goals. That would change once he met the last dragons. While much of his training under his uncle would teach him precision, his training with the Sun Warriors and the dragons taught him how to find the power within. Since firebending is tied directly to one's energy and chi, one's temperament directly informed their functionality. That being said, Zuko had a lot to unravel before he found his true power within himself. In doing so, his fighting style became more fluent and effortless. His previous robotic approach to firebending was remodeled to the fluid dance of the dragons. The refit of his style helped him to fight as Azula's equal, becoming a master firebender in his own right. Mako learned his firebending from very different sources. Initially, he was self-taught, fending for himself and his brother on the streets of Republic City. He would showcase a natural talent with fire, able to win most of his exchanges with thugs and the like. Mako's skill would garner the attention of the Triple Threat Triads, whose leader held a particular fancy for Mako. Eventually, Mako would find himself in Republic City's Pro-Bending League, where he was renowned for his slick use of firebending. He was even noted to be able to take on whole teams by himself. His technique as a recreational firebender would translate well into his real-life combative efforts. And after some time, he would find himself helping Avatar Korra to fight off the impending threat of the Equalist. In terms of training, Mako would not have much else beyond that point in life. The rest of his young adult life was marked by experience. Most of that experience coming from his time in the Republic City police force. Mako's most advanced use of bending would be with lightning. Each element came in variants and evolutions. Waterbenders could heal and bend the blood in one's body. Earthbenders were capable of altering metal and lava. Airbenders have the potential to achieve unassisted and sustainable flight. And firebenders could produce explosives and lightning. As stated before, the leader of the Triple Threat Triads, Lightning Bolt Zolt, took a liking to Mako. In doing so, he taught Mako the ways of lightning bending and redirection. Mako has showcased power, control, and accuracy with his lightning. Powerful enough to disable several tanks, control enough to incapacitate his foes, and accuracy enough to use it tactically. Mako's power with lightning was so potent, he was able to hit Amon with it while being bloodbent. With all that being said, Zuko was also familiar with lightning bending. Although Zuko has never been seen producing lightning, I believe he would have been capable after the events of Book 3. The reason his uncle Iroh was not able to teach him the ability was because of Zuko's lack of confidence and clearness of mind. Even so, he was certainly able to redirect the most powerful bolts of lightning, even able to repel the Fire Lord's lightning, the most powerful lightning at the time, and giving pause to his sister Azula, whose powers were magnified by Sozin's comet. But Zuko's defense did not stop with lightning. He was very agile and nimble, able to evade attack with relative ease. His fire shields were also strong, stonewalling direct assaults from the Combustion Man. Mako was also no slouch in his defense. During his short pro-bending career, he will be well known for his cool under fire technique. Essentially, he would go on the defense, bobbing and weaving like a champion boxer. Once he saw an opening, he countered with a rapid sequence of firebending, something more akin to a waterbender. On the surface, Zuko and Mako looked like equally proficient firebenders, but Zuko had much better training and more experience with extremely skilled fighters, learning from the Sun Warrior dragons and contending with Azula to a draw. On the other hand, Mako was able to produce lightning with relative ease, devastating mecha tanks and shocking Amon. Still, Zuko could counter his lightning with his own redirection. They are equally skilled, but ultimately, Zuko has an answer for everything Mako could dish out. Mako's cool under fire technique would help him give a good fight, but in the end, Zuko was the superior firebender. Therefore, Zuko gets the edge for his bending abilities. As a child, Zuko lacked confidence. As an adolescent, he became resentful, and as he grew into a man, he became noble. Zuko was something like a phoenix, burning himself down through doubt and bitterness, renewing into honor and conviction. Zuko's determination was unrelenting, but he was also deeply compassionate. In almost direct contrast to Zuko's hills and valleys of emotion, Mako was quite jaded and apathetic. However, he did share Zuko's determination and drive. Mako was marked by his sharp edge. His time on the streets and his tenure with the Triads turned his disposition into something like a prison inmate, always wearing a poker face. Even though his sister Azula was far more intelligent and strategic, Zuko was not a complete airhead. During his hunt for Avatar Aang, he displayed great intellect. This would extend to his tenure as Fire Lord as well. In a specific fight, Zuko was a relatively aggressive fighter, always leveraging an offensive. But that's not to say that Zuko was single-minded in his offensive efforts. He was quite mindful of his surroundings, able to redirect and stonewall enemy attacks. He may have suffered from tunnel vision as a younger man, but through his experience and enhanced training, he would become more composed, yet still powerful. Mako was also a very relaxed fighter. Not to mention, he was quick-witted and strong-willed. Unlike Zuko, Mako was a relatively balanced fighter, favoring neither his offense nor his defense over the other. Typically, he started out his fights with evasion, simply bobbing, weaving, and slipping his opponent's assaults. Once he found an opening, he attacked. The only issue with this tactic was the reliance of defense rather than pressing his own dedicated onslaught. Instead of producing sustained fire blooms, he retaliated with precision fire cuts and jabs. Effective, but not heavy-hitting. It may seem that Mako would get the edge for his tactical abilities. After all, he was a pretty balanced fighter. The only issue with his style was that it didn't pack a very heavy punch. He would not hit back with anything stronger than Azula has attacked with. While Zuko has less balance in the way of his fighting, his offensive and defensive measures were very astute. He would often follow up a stonewall defense with an even stronger attack. Although this round is possibly the closest of them all, there is still a definitive and more effective fighter. Mako's own tactics would keep him in the fight, but it would not win him the fight. Again, it would be Zuko's experience in fighting that would help him leverage his own advantage. Zuko gets the slight edge for his tactical abilities. A fight between Zuko and Mako would be a heated, furious inferno. They both were proficient firebenders with similar physiques and capabilities. Let's set up this fight. Let's say it takes place at a typical Agni Kai sparring arena. As a final tally, I would say the advantage to the victor goes 9-10. No, this is not a stomp or even near a stomp. Each of these 10 matches would be extremely close and a sight to see. A stomp is something like Avatar Aang vs. Boomy. A 9 out of 10 verdict still can infer several close matches. The markup of these numbers are simply an illustration of advantages, not overall skill or power. Hopefully it'll make more sense once I highlight the following hypothetical battle. Zuko would attack first, throwing out a rapid succession of fire jabs. Mako would evade the simplistic attacks, casting the fire away, ducking and dodging the rest he could not. Once he felt comfortable with Zuko's attack patterns, he will begin punching and kicking out flames of his own, looking for gaps in Zuko's form. But the young Fire Lord would be ready, stonewalling Mako's offensive efforts. Zuko will begin pressing his advantage, stepping in closer and closer to Mako, utilizing his fire daggers for leverage. Mako would return in kind, producing his own fire daggers to face off against Zuko's. Yet, Zuko's hand-to-hand skills were superior, hitting Mako with a few punches, sweeping Mako at the legs. Mako would stand firm, rolling the punches as he rolled off pro benders. In a rapid movement, he would catch one of Zuko's arms and throw him bodily aside. Now that he had distance, he would start producing lightning, shooting it out towards Zuko. With a calm grace, Zuko would catch the lightning easily, redirecting it and shooting it back at Mako. The lightning forks at Mako's feet, creating an explosion, and the young man would be thrown back. Quickly, Mako would kick up, ready to engage a charging Zuko. The pair would fight evenly for several minutes in a spectacular firework of embers. Zuko had an answer for everything Mako threw at him, dodging and countering his fire strikes, withstanding and enduring his hand-to-hand martial arts, and redirecting his bolts of lightning. Zuko simply was better trained, more able in the heat of battle, and he knew firebending too well. Mako would prove to be a challenge, but the matchup would simply be a bad one for him. Eventually, Zuko would come out victorious, sweeping Mako at the feet or scorching him across the chest. And thus, I declare Zuko the Prince, the Exile, the Fire Lord, the victor. Of course, this is all just my opinion. Please leave your thoughts and comments below. Do you think Mako could have won the majority? Or do you agree that Zuko has the definitive victory? And of course, peace, love, and remember, be water, my friend. She would be willing and able to fight, but Zahir would certainly be a worthy opponent. What he lacked in bending experience, he made up for with his non-bending martial arts. Do I like it? Do I not like it? Oh, I actually kind of like it. Oh my god, I like airbending a lot. Oh god, I like it.